The arena roared with the deafening cheers of thousands, a cacophony of alien voices blending into a single wave of bloodlust. Towering pillars of obsidian lined the colossal fighting pit, their surfaces carved with the names of the fallen warlords who had dared to challenge the Battle Queen and failed. At the center stood Zarvel, her massive frame clad in armor made from the bones of her enemies, her forearms flexing as she paced like a predator. The crowd chanted her name, a rhythmic, guttural sound that shook the very ground. She was undefeated, unbroken, a goddess of war, in a realm where only strength mattered. Today was the day of the gauntleter tradition, where 100 challengers would face her, one after another, until none remained. The first was a hulking brute from the ice world of Vorthox, his hide thick as stone. He charged with a roar, swinging a massive hammer that could crush a starship's hull. Zarval moved like lightning, her claws slicing through his weapon before burying themselves in his chest. The crowd erupted as she lifted him overhead and ripped him apart, his blood raining down onto the sand. The next challenger lasted even less. Then the next, and the next. By the time the 99th corpse hit the ground, the sand was slick with gore, and the air stank of iron and burnt flesh. The crowd was in a frenzy, howling for the final challenger, the 100th, but when the gates creaked open, no mighty warrior emerged. Instead, a lone human staggered forward, his clothes torn, his face bruised from captivity. The crowd's cheers turned to laughter. A human. Pathetic, soft, weak. Zarvel sneered, flexing her claws. "This is the best the universe could throw at me," she bellowed, her voice echoing across the arena. A creature of flesh and fear, the human Jace Varric didn't flinch. He wiped blood from his lip and grinned. "You've never fought a human before, have you?" Silence fell. Then Zarval attacked. The air in the arena grew thick with tension as Zarval lunged, her claws slicing through the space where Jace had stood a heartbeat before. But he wasn't there. He had sidestepped at the last moment, his movements fluid and unhurried, as if he had known exactly where she would strike. The crowd's laughter died in their throats. This wasn't the desperate flailing of a doomed prey animal, this was something else. Zarval snarled and attacked again, her forearms a blur of lethal motion. Jace ducked, rolled, and came up just out of reach, his eyes never leaving hers. He wasn't fighting like the others, no grand charges, no roars of defiance. He was waiting, watching, learning. The sand beneath his feet was uneven, littered with the shattered weapons and broken armor of the fallen, and he used it all, kicking up dust to obscure her vision, using a discarded shield to deflect a blow that would have split him in half. The Battle Queen's frustration grew with every missed strike. She was used to opponents who met her head-on, who fought with honor or died screaming. This human refused to do either. He moved like smoke, always just out of reach, his breath steady despite the danger. When she finally cornered him against the arena wall, he didn't panic. Instead, he grinned, a flash of white teeth in a blood-streaked face, and said, "You're predictable." Her claws tore into the stone where his head had been as he dropped low and drove his shoulder into her midsection. It was like hitting a mountain, but it forced her back a single step. The crowd gasped. No one had ever made Zarval retreat, not even an inch. She recovered instantly, backhanding him across the arena. He hit the ground hard, skidding through the sand, but he was up again before the dust settled, spitting blood. "That all you got?" he taunted, his voice rough but unwavering. Zarval's chest heaved with rage. This wasn't a fight, it was a game to him, and she hated games. She would end this now. With a roar, she charged, her claws aimed to carve him apart in a single brutal strike. Jace didn't dodge this time. He braced himself, waited until the last possible second, and then twisted, letting her momentum carry her past him. Her claws sank deep into the arena wall instead of flesh, and before she could wrench them free, Jace was on her back, his arm hooked around her throat in a chokehold. The crowd erupted. No one had ever touched the Battle Queen like this. No one had ever dared. Zarval thrashed, her massive strength nearly throwing him off, but Jace held on, his grip like iron. "You're strong," he hissed in her ear, his voice barely audible over the crowd's roar. "But strength isn't everything." For the first time in her life, Zarval felt something cold and unfamiliar coil in her gut. Fear. The chokehold lasted only seconds before Zarval's raw strength prevailed. With a roar that shook the arena, she arched her back and flung Jace over her shoulder like a ragdoll. He hit the bloodstained sand hard, rolling several times before coming to rest near the corpse of a previous challenger. The crowd's cheers turned to murmurs. Never had they seen their queen so challenged. Never had a combatant lasted this long. Jace spat out a mouthful of blood as he pushed himself to his knees. His ribs screamed in protest. At least two were broken from that last impact. Yet when he looked up at Zarval, his grin remained, though now it was more grimace than smile. "Getting personal now," he wheezed, dragging himself upright, using a broken spear shaft as support. Zarval flexed her claws, the razor-sharp edges glinting under the arena's harsh lights. Her breathing came heavier now, not from exhaustion but from something far more dangerous. This soft-skinned human had touched her, had dared to challenge her dominance in front of her people. Her next attack wouldn't be about spectacle, it would be about extermination. She came at him like a storm, all four arms moving in perfect, deadly harmony. Jace barely avoided the first swipe, the second grazing his shoulder and sending a spray of crimson across the sand. The third strike, he deflected with the broken spear, the impact numbing his arms. The fourth never came. Instead, Zarvel's tail whipped around, catching him across the midsection and sending him crashing into the arena wall. The impact drove the air from Jace's lungs. Stars danced in his vision as he slid down the rough stone surface. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the crowd chanting for the killing blow. Through blurred eyes, he saw Zarvel approaching, her massive form blocking out the arena lights. "You fight well. For a human," she growled, raising one clawed hand for the final strike. But this ends now. Jace's hand closed around something cold and metallic in the sand, a discarded weapon from an earlier combatant. As Zarvel's arm descended, he moved with the last of his strength, twisting his body and driving the jagged metal shard deep into the soft joint of her elbow. Zarvel's bellow of pain shook the arena. Purple blood sprayed from the wound as she staggered back, her left arms going momentarily limp. The crowd fell utterly silent, their invincible queen, bleeding. Jace used the moment to regain his feet, breathing hard. "Told you," he gasped, wiping blood from his eyes. Predictable. The Battle Queen's remaining eyes burned with fury. She wrenched the metal fragment from her arm and crushed it in her fist. "You will die screaming for that insult," she promised, her voice trembling with rage. But as she prepared to charge again, something unexpected happened. A single voice from the highest tiers of the arena began chanting, not Zarvel's name, but Jace's. Then another joined, and another. For the first time in the Calothi Dominion's history, the crowd was cheering for the challenger. The chanting of Jace's name rippled through the crowd like wildfire, growing louder with each passing second. Zarvel's head snapped up, her multiple eyes scanning the stands in disbelief. Never in her centuries of rule had she heard anything but adoration from her subjects. Now their voices rose in support of this battered, bleeding human who refused to die properly. Jace barely registered the crowd's shift. His world had narrowed to the pounding of his heart, the coppery taste of blood in his mouth, and the massive alien queen before him. Every breath sent sharp knives of pain through his ribs, but he forced himself to stand straight, to meet Zarvel's gaze without flinching. The metal shard had bought him seconds, nothing more. He needed to end this now. Zarvel recovered, faster than he anticipated. With a snarl that revealed rows of needle-sharp teeth, she lunged again, her wounded arm hanging limp, but the other three striking with terrifying precision. Jace barely avoided the first swipe, but the second caught him across the chest, sending him sprawling. The third would have taken his head off if he hadn't rolled at the last instant, feeling the whoosh of air as her claws passed inches from his face. The sand burned against his wounds as he scrambled backward, putting precious distance between them. His hands closed around another discarded weapon, this time a broken chain from some previous combatant's flail. Not much, but better than nothing. He wrapped it around his fist as he rose, the links clinking softly. "You're slowing down," Jace taunted, spitting blood to the side. His vision swam dangerously, but he couldn't show weakness now. "All those years of killing helpless challengers made you soft." Zarvel's answering roar shook the arena. She charged like a living battering ram, her massive form blotting out the light. Jace waited until the last possible second before diving to the side, lashing out with the chain as he passed. The metal links wrapped around her injured arm, and Jace pulled with all his remaining strength. The crowd gasped as their queen stumbled, caught off balance by the sudden pressure on her wounded limb. Jace didn't let up, yanking harder, using her own momentum against her. For one impossible moment, it looked like the mighty Battle Queen might actually fall. Then reality reasserted itself. With a contemptuous flex of her muscles, Zarvel snapped the chain-like thread and backhanded Jace across the arena. He hit the ground hard, skidding through blood and sand before coming to rest near the center of the pit. His vision went gray at the edges, his body screaming at him to stay down. But he wouldn't. Groaning, Jace pushed himself to his knees. Then his feet, his left arm hung useless at his side, dislocated or broken. He couldn't tell through the haze of pain. Blood dripped steadily from numerous wounds, forming dark patterns in the sand beneath him. Yet when he looked up at Zarvel, his grin remained, though now it was more a baring of teeth than anything resembling humor. "You still haven't figured it out," he panted, swaying slightly on his feet. "I don't need ... to beat you, just ... outlast you." Zarvel paused, her breath coming in heavy gusts. For the first time, Jace noticed the way her shoulders heaved, the slight tremble in her limbs. She wasn't tired, not exactly, but centuries of easy victories had made her careless. Every missed strike, every frustrated roar, every ounce of rage she wasted on him was another small victory. The realization dawned in her eyes at the same moment. It crystallized in Jace's mind. This wasn't a battle of strength anymore. It was a battle of wills. and for the first time in her long bloody reign, Zarvel was afraid she might lose. The arena had fallen, eerily silent, the crowd holding its collective breath as the two combatants faced each other across the bloodied sand. Jace swayed like a tree in a storm, his body pushed far beyond human limits, yet still refusing to fall. Zarvel stood motionless, her massive frame heaving with something more than physical exertion. The dawning realization that this fight wasn't going as planned. Jace wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, leaving a dark smear across his face. His vision kept blurring, but he forced himself to focus. He'd been in worse spots before, or at least that's what he told himself. The important thing was that Zarvel had stopped attacking. She was thinking now, hesitating. And hesitation was something he could use. You don't get it, do you? Jace's voice was rough, each word an effort. All those warriors you killed before me, they fought to win. I'm just fighting not to lose. There's a difference. Zarvel's claws flexed, her tail lashing behind her like an angry serpent. Your words mean nothing. Human, you will die like all the others. Maybe, Jace admitted, taking a shaky step forward. But you're not sure anymore. That's why you're talking instead of killing me. The truth of his words struck home. Zarvel's eyes narrowed, her confidence wavering for the first time in centuries. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Challengers were meant to break, to beg, to die spectacularly for the crowd's amusement, not stand there bleeding and smiling, making her question everything. With a roar that shook dust from the arena walls, Zarvel charged again, but this time her movements were wild, uncontrolled, the attacks of someone who had stopped thinking and started reacting. Jace barely avoided the first swipe, the second grazing his already injured side and drawing a fresh wave of pain. The third attack came too fast to dodge completely, her claws raking across his chest and sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped as one. This had to be the end. No one could take that much punishment and keep fighting. Yet when the dust settled, Jace was moving again, dragging himself upright, using the broken shaft of a spear as support. His breathing came in ragged gasps, his body a canvas of cuts and bruises, but his eyes burned with undimmed defiance. Zarvel stared at him, genuine confusion mixing with her rage. Why won't you just die? She demanded, her voice echoing through the silent arena. Jace coughed, spitting out blood before answering. Because that's what humans do, he said, pushing off from the spear and standing on his own power. We keep going when we should fall. We fight when we should surrender. He took an unsteady step forward. And sometimes, we win when we should lose. The words hung in the air between them, charged with something more powerful than weapons or strength. Zarvel hesitated, her certainty crumbling moment by moment. The crowd sensed it too. Their cheers for Jace grew louder, more insistent. The atmosphere in the arena had shifted irrevocably. Jace saw his opening. Not in Zarvel's defenses, her body was still a fortress of muscle and armor, but in her mind, he took another step forward, then another, moving with the grim determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. You could kill me now, he admitted, stopping just outside her reach. But it won't change what's already happened. You've been challenged. Really challenged, and everyone here has seen it. Zarvel's claws trembled at her sides. For the first time in her long reign, the Battle Queen didn't know what to do. The human was right. Killing him now wouldn't erase the doubt he'd planted, wouldn't restore her image of invincibility. The crowd's shifting allegiance proved that. A strange quiet settled over the arena. As the two combatants stood facing each other, both battered, both bleeding, both pushed to their absolute limits. The outcome hung in the balance, not of strength or skill, but of something far more fundamental, the will to continue. Jace raised his hands, not in surrender, but an invitation. Your move, Queen, he whispered. The arena trembled with the weight of unspoken tension as Zarvel stared at the broken but unbowed human before her. Her claws twitched at her sides, muscles coiled to deliver a killing blow that would end this farce once and for all. Yet something stayed her hand, not fear, not mercy, but something far more alien to her nature, doubt. Jace stood swaying like a dead man walking, his body held together by sheer stubbornness. Blood matted his hair, dripped from his fingertips, pooled in the sand beneath his feet. One eye had swollen shut, his breathing came in wet, ragged gasps, yet his remaining eye burned with undimmed fire. He didn't raise his fists, didn't brace for attack, simply stood there, waiting. The crowd's chanting had died to a hushed murmur. No one dared breathe. Zarvel's tail lashed once, twice, then stilled. Her massive chest rose and fell with unsteady rhythm. You should be dead, she growled, the words tasting strange on her tongue. Jace coughed, spat, crimson, and managed a broken smile. Yeah, I get that a lot. Something in his voice, that damned human resilience, that refusal to acknowledge defeat, even when it stared him in the face, made Zarvel's claws retract without her conscious decision. She took a step back, then another, her movements uncharacteristically hesitant. The crowd gasped, their invincible queen. Retreating, Jace didn't press the advantage, couldn't have even if he wanted to. He just stood there, a broken monument to human endurance, watching as the Battle Queen of the Kaluthi Dominion came face to face with an enemy no claws could rend nor strength overpower. The realization that she wasn't invincible, Zarvel's knees hit the sand with a soft thud. The arena erupted. Not in cheers, not in jeers, but in a wave of stunned silence that crashed over every spectator like a physical force. The mighty Zarval, conqueror of worlds, slayer of champions, knelt in the bloodied sand before a human who by all rights should have died 100 times over. Jace limped forward, each step in agony, until he stood before her. He didn't gloat, didn't strike the killing blow, simply extended a trembling, bloodied hand. Yield, he said, the word barely more than a whisper. Zarvel's shoulders shook, not from wounds, but from something far more devastating. When she spoke, her voice carried none of its former thunder. I yield. The words hung in the air like a death knell for an era. Jace's legs gave out then, his body finally succumbing to its accumulated damage. He collapsed to his knees, facing Zarval, their positions mirroring each other in the crimson sand. Through the haze of pain, he saw something unexpected in the Battle Queen's eyes. Not hatred, not even anger, but something resembling respect. The arena physicians rushed forward, but Zarval waved them back with a growl. Instead, she reached out with surprising gentleness and caught Jace as he toppled sideways, cradling the broken human in her massive arms. Remember this day, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent arena. Remember what you have witnessed here. She looked down at the unconscious human in her arms, then back to her people. Today, strength was not enough. As the medics finally swarmed them both, the crowd remained frozen in stunned silence. The legend of Zarval's invincibility had been shattered, but in its place rose something far more dangerous. The legend of the human who made the battle. Queen kneeled. And somewhere, in the highest tiers of the arena, a single voice began chanting a name that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Jace, Jace, Jace.